The nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine force is the cornerstone of the United States strategic deterrent. The ability to remain undetected beneath the ocean's waves for extended periods of time makes this force the most survivable element of our nation's nuclear triad. Tonight, as we gather to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Fleet Ballistic Missile Program, I invite you to enjoy this look at our FBM heritage.
Made a greater sacrifice for the cause of peace than you, America's proud missile submarine family. You stand tall among all the heroes of the Cold War.
As we work to assure a future of continued peace through strength, through deterrence, it is important to remember the past. Pioneers of the FBM program like Red Rayborn, Pete Gallatin, and Levering Smith led the FBM team and met the challenge of delivering a reliable, survivable strategic weapon system for our country. Here is a look at the early years of the FBM program, the Polaris through Poseidon years.
More firepower from the missiles, which will be stored here, than all the bombs dropped in both sides of World War II combined. Just one of these submarines.
When the Secretary of the Navy created the Special Projects Office in 1955, to develop a submarine-launched ballistic missile, there was a long line of critics saying it couldn't be done.
I gave Admiral Rayburn this letter because there was a lot of opposition within the Navy, too. Not opposition, there were a lot of differences of opinion. A lot of people thought this cannot be done. There's too much to do. There are too many things that are undeveloped, too many breakthroughs that we have to have.
The Navy's goal was to take the Army's liquid-fueled Jupiter missile and configure it to be deployed aboard an underwater nuclear-powered submarine. Red Rayburn quickly determined the liquid propellant concept would not meet the needs of the Navy and authorized Lockheed Missiles and Space Division to proceed with the development of the missile he christened Polaris. Aerojet was contracted to develop the solid propellant rocket motors, Westinghouse the launcher, General Electric fire control, Sperry submarine guidance, and the missile guidance system was designed by Dr. Charles Stark Draper's laboratories. Meanwhile, in Groton, Connecticut, General Dynamics Electric Boat Division had a nuclear-powered Scorpion submarine under construction. Admiral Hyman G. Rickover gave this assessment of the submarine in 1956.
For practically unlimited distances under the water, I consider that she's a new weapon, and that she may have just as profound an effect on naval tactics and strategy as the airplane has had on war.
The Scorpion attack submarine was literally cut in half, and a 128-foot-long missile compartment section was welded in the center. Everything was on schedule to meet the CNO's plan to deploy a strategic missile submarine by 1965. All of that changed on 4 October 1957. If the Soviet Union had the ability to put a satellite in orbit, they would soon have the capability to deliver a nuclear warhead from space. The United States countered by providing the Special Projects Office with an additional $350 million and accelerating the program by 18 months. And with the success of Operations Pea Shooter, Skycatch, and Pop-Up, Red Rayburn vowed to have a submarine on patrol by the end of 1960. However, when flight testing of the Polaris AX series began at Cape Canaveral in late 1958, the critics were smug. There were problems in the early development flights, but that's to be expected when pushing the state-of-the-art. And by the 6th test firing on 20 April 1959, full success was achieved and the program was on track. In December of that same year, the Scorpion attack submarine was commissioned as USS George Washington. Following sea trials, the first full system test of submarine, weapon system, and crew was conducted on 20 July 1960.
Weapons launcher, tube number 9 is pressurized.
Opening the muzzle hatch on tube 9.
Weapons, this is launcher. Tube number 9, muzzle hatch locked open.
Mark, T-minus 30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 25 seconds and counting.
Minus 20.
T-minus 20 seconds.
Stand by. Stand by. Stand by. 10.
Minus 10 seconds.
Stand by. Stand by. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Fire. Missile away.
Radar's tracking.
Radar is tracking.
After an unqualified success, a second firing with the same results took place 2 hours later. In November 1960, USS George Washington, carrying 16 Polaris missiles, departed Charleston, South Carolina, to begin the first strategic deterrent patrol. The system was up and running, 5 years ahead of schedule, distinguishing the FBM program as the most intensive weapon development in the history of the United States. technology improvements continued, and Polaris A2 and A3 quickly replaced the original A1. Across the Atlantic, our NATO ally Great Britain watched with keen interest. Seeking an independent nuclear deterrent, United Kingdom Prime Minister Harold Macmillan met with President John F. Kennedy in Nassau in December 1962.
In 1963, after some fairly tense and detailed negotiations, which you'd expect between two governments that's spending such a lot of money, we actually agreed to buy the Polaris weapon system and a number of missiles. To these missiles, we're going to fit our own designed and manufactured warheads, thus guaranteeing the nuclear independence, or the independence of our deterrent. There then followed some very busy years, and it was in 1968 when HMS Resolution departed the Clyde on her first Polaris patrol. Since then, our 4 Resolution boats, Her Majesty's ships Resolution, Renown, Repulse and Revenge, have conducted over 220 Polaris deterrent patrols, and those submarines are now being phased out as the Trident D5 system comes online. And we will say goodbye with some affection to those boats because they've been grand old ladies, but we look forward to the future with some enthusiasm.
Meanwhile, in the United States, the development task for greater accuracy and more punch per vehicle continued. In January 1965, development of the Poseidon C-3 missile was announced. The 2,500 nautical mile missile fit inside the current Lafayette-class submarines contained vastly improved accuracy and, most importantly, deployed multiple independent targeted re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs. Poseidon became operational in 1971, and with submarines conducting Polaris and Poseidon strategic deterrent patrols out of Charleston in the Atlantic, Bangor, Washington in the Pacific, and tender-supported sites at Holy Loch, Scotland, Rota, Spain, and Guam, the Global Fleet Ballistic Missile Weapon System was fully in place.
Once we had Poseidon and MIRV capability, the next step was to deploy a weapon system with greater range and improved accuracy, and design a submarine to carry that weapon system with room to grow for the next generation of fleet ballistic missile. Bob Wertheim, Glenwood Clark, Ken Malley, and John Mitchell kept the program on track while each was at the helm of SP. Here are some highlights of our currently deployed strategic weapon systems: Trident I C4 and Trident II D5.
Even before Poseidon was deployed, the 4,000 nautical mile C4 missile was on the drawing boards. The C4 upgrade increased propulsion volume and placed heavy reliance on cutting-edge technologies like micro-miniature electronics, graphite epoxy structures, and the aerodynamic aerospike. USS Francis Scott Key completed a major overhaul to accommodate the Trident I weapon system and began the initial C4 deterrent patrol in October 1979. Meanwhile, at Electric Boat, the first Trident submarine built from the keel up was under construction. Commissioned in 1981, USS Ohio is 560 feet long, displaces nearly 19,000 tons, and carries 24 C4 missiles. Like previous ballistic missile submarines, the Tridents were designed with room to grow. And as Ohio's first 7 sister ships were coming online to carry C4 missiles in the Pacific, the Trident II D5 missile was under development at Lockheed. With improvements in propellants, composites, and missile and submarine electronics, the D5 development program proved the Trident II missile could deliver a long-range payload with hard target capability with incredible accuracy. On 21 March 1989, it was time to put the test to sea.
One of the most exciting times of my life, without a question, was when I was director of SP, was riding the USS Tennessee for the first submerged launch of a Trident II submarine. The R&D program was fantastic. The flat pad test was super. We were able to cut back on the number of missiles we had. We had tremendous confidence that we had a good product here, a bird that had high reliability and also high accuracy. The countdown, as I recall, was flawless. And we got down to T-0, launch. You could feel the pulse throughout the submarine and the vibration through the submarine. We all looked around and smiled and gave a thumbs up. And then we heard Captain Lyman, who was on our support ship. You could hear him announce broach, ignition, and you could hear the ignition. You could hear the bird light off, and the cheer went up. Ignition went great, and then it immediately went into a tight 3-spiral with a half twist, and I guess if it were a diving contest, he would have given us a 10. Why did it fail? What did we miss? And then how do we fix it? I got called over a few months after the failure to the Senate to provide a technical explanation of how we were doing. And I made a deal with the congressmen or the senators and their staffers, and the deal was basically this: give me the opportunity to shoot 3 successful missiles in stressing environments by December. And if we don't get 3 successful tests as I promise, you can have all the money you want, because if we haven't figured it out by December, we'll probably never figure it out. And thank goodness we had 3 fantastic tests. And that was one of the best pieces of cooperation, again, I have to emphasize, in our whole team and how we did things. And it's a recipe I wish we could package and sell to everybody else. But that got us through the extremes, and since that date, to the best of my knowledge, we've never had another failure.
With D5 online, the United States ushered in a new era of dependable and undetectable undersea deterrence. In the United Kingdom, the Royal Navy's first Trident II capable submarine, HMS Vanguard, was undergoing sea trials.
Following sea trials, the merchant ship Vanguard arrived at Kings Bay on the 28th of April 1994. It's a date we should all remember, I think, to receive her Day-So missiles before leaving for the Eastern Test Range at Canaveral to conduct test firings for both the port and the starboard crews. Since those successful firings, Vanguard has been on patrol, and she will soon be joined by HMS Victorious, who has just completed her Day-So and received her tactical outload of missiles at Kings Bay. We have benefited from a lot of friendly advice and guidance as we brought our system online. We'd like to think that the US has benefited from our thoughts too. However, this trust has underpinned the joint success